It was one of those gray, drizzly mornings when the city seemed quieter than usual. Street lights flickered in the damp haze, and the wind carried the scent of rain-soaked asphalt through the streets. Inside a towering glass office building, Samantha Reed, the young daughter of the city's most prominent CEO, waited alone in the lobby. Her father, Richard Reed, was a man constantly consumed by work. A single father since the passing of his wife 5 years ago, he had done his best to balance business and parenting, but his job often demanded more than he could give. Today was no exception. A sudden board meeting had taken him out of the office, leaving Samantha stranded in the vast lobby, her small fingers gripping the edge of the reception desk. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" the receptionist asked kindly. Samantha gave a small nod, though her eyes were downcast. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Dad's busy." The truth was, she wasn't fine. She was lonely. The lobby was enormous and cold, filled with polished marble floors, grand chandeliers, and the hum of distant machinery. People walked past her in a blur, too occupied with their own lives to notice the small girl sitting quietly by herself. She hugged her backpack to her chest, wishing her father would materialize, wishing for someone, anyone, to make the day feel less empty. Meanwhile, a few blocks away, Michael Turner, a single father himself, navigated the crowded streets with his young son, Ben, clinging to his hand. Michael was a hard-working man, managing a small but successful tech company. His days were long, and his responsibilities were endless, yet he made time for Ben, determined to ensure his son felt the love and attention he had once wished for as a child. As they walked past the Reed building, Michael noticed a small figure sitting alone in the lobby through the large glass windows. Samantha's tiny frame, the slump of her shoulders, and the lonely way she clutched her backpack tugged at something inside him. "Ben," Michael said softly, "look at that girl. She's all alone." Ben glanced at her and frowned. "She looks sad, Daddy." Michael nodded. "Yes, she does. Maybe she needs a friend today." Without hesitation, Michael held Ben's hand tighter and headed toward the lobby. He didn't know who Samantha was, didn't know she was the daughter of the city's most powerful CEO. He only knew that she needed kindness, attention, and a moment of warmth. When Michael entered the lobby, he knelt to Ben's level and whispered, "Let's go say hello." Samantha looked up, startled. Her wide eyes met Michael's gentle gaze. He smiled warmly, showing no judgment or suspicion. "Hi there," he said kindly. "Are you waiting for someone?" Samantha hesitated, unsure of how to respond. She had been left alone so often that the sight of a stranger approaching without impatience or anger felt almost surreal. I'm waiting for my dad," she admitted softly. Michael nodded. "I see. Sometimes grown-ups get busy, don't they? My son and I were just on our way somewhere, and we saw you sitting here. You looked like you could use some company." Samantha blinked, uncertainty mixed with a glimmer of hope. "Really?" "Yes, really," Michael said, crouching so he was at her eye level. "I'm Michael, and this is Ben. We know what it's like to be left waiting. So maybe we can make this morning a little better for you." Something in Samantha's heart fluttered. Here was someone who didn't care about her wealth, her father's reputation, or her status. Here was a man who simply saw a little girl who needed a friend. They spent the next few minutes sharing stories. Samantha told them about her cat, Whiskers, and her favorite picture books. Ben showed her a small toy robot he had been carrying, which he insisted could do magic tricks. Michael laughed along, gently steering the conversation so Samantha would feel comfortable. Time passed quickly, and for the first time that morning, Samantha felt the tight knot of loneliness in her chest loosen. She giggled at Ben's robot antics, her small face lighting up in a way that made Michael's heart ache with empathy and joy simultaneously. "See?" Michael said, smiling. "Even the smallest friends can make a day feel special." Samantha looked at him shyly. "Thank you," she whispered. I like talking to you." "You're welcome," Michael replied softly. And we like talking to you too. You know, sometimes even the busiest days can have little surprises. At that moment, Samantha didn't know that Michael had no idea she was the CEO's daughter. He treated her with simple, unpretentious kindness, a kind that transcended wealth, status, and societal expectations. And for Samantha, that was exactly what made it magical. By the time Richard Reed returned to the building, a half hour later than expected, he found his daughter laughing and playing with Michael and Ben near the lobby fountain. Samantha looked up at him, her face glowing, and ran into his arms. "Daddy!" she exclaimed. "You're back!" Richard hugged her tightly, grateful she had someone to keep her company. "I'm so sorry I was late, sweetheart," he said. Samantha shook her head. "It's okay, Daddy, someone helped me. I had a fun morning." She turned to Michael, eyes shining. "Thank you for everything." Michael smiled modestly. "Anytime, Samantha. It was nice to meet you." Richard finally noticed Michael. Their eyes met, and he saw the genuine warmth in the man's expression. There was an unspoken understanding. This was someone who had touched his daughter's life in a way he could not have arranged himself. That night, Samantha went to bed with a sense of happiness she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in months, she felt seen, heard, and cared for, not because of her father's position, but because someone had chosen to make her day brighter. Michael and Ben walked away from the Reed building, oblivious to the fact that they had met the daughter of a wealthy CEO. To them, it was simply a morning spent helping a little girl who had needed a friend. Yet unbeknownst to all three of them, this small act of kindness, the decision to stop and talk, to include a lonely girl in their day, would change all of their lives in ways none of them could have imagined. The next morning, Samantha woke up to the soft glow of sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. The laughter from the previous day still lingered in her mind, making her feel lighter than she had in months. Her father, Richard, was already at work, his busy schedule pulling him away before she could even finish breakfast. But the memory of meeting Michael and Ben gave her hope, a spark that made the morning feel less lonely. At school, Samantha tried to keep her mind off her usual isolation. Despite being the CEO's daughter, she often felt invisible among her peers. Her wealth made her a target for envy, while her father's absence left her longing for connection. But today, she carried with her the memory of yesterday, a man who had seen her for who she truly was, and a child who had shared laughter without judgment. After school, Samantha lingered near the building's lobby again, hoping to see Michael and Ben. She didn't know if they would return, but the hope kept her going. Hours passed, and just as she was about to leave, she spotted them walking toward the building. Michael waved, and Samantha's face lit up with a smile she hadn't realized she could wear so freely. "Hi, Samantha," Michael greeted warmly. "We were just in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by." Samantha ran to them, her excitement evident. "I'm so glad you came back." Ben held out the toy robot from yesterday. "I brought it for you," he said proudly. Samantha took it, amazed that such a simple gesture could make her feel so cared for. Michael smiled at her joy. "How about we go get some hot chocolate? My treat. You've earned it for being such a brave girl." Samantha hesitated for a moment, glancing at the lobby. "But my dad." David's office was busy as usual, but Michael reassured her. "It'll be quick, and we'll be back before anyone notices. Trust me." Samantha nodded and followed them. The three of them walked to a small cafe nearby, its warm interior a sharp contrast to the chilly streets. The aroma of chocolate and baked goods filled the air, and for a while Samantha forgot the loneliness that had shadowed her life for so long. Over the next few days, Michael and Ben made it a point to visit Samantha whenever they could, whether it was a quick stop for a warm drink, a small game in the park, or sharing stories on the steps of the Reed building. The bond between the three grew stronger. Michael never treated Samantha as the CEO's daughter. She was simply another child in need of friendship, laughter, and attention. One afternoon, as snow began to fall lightly outside, Samantha confided in Michael. "It's hard sometimes, having a dad who's always busy. I feel like I'm invisible." Michael looked at her with understanding. I know how that feels. My son and I don't always have much, but we have each other. And sometimes the best thing anyone can do is just be there for someone." Samantha thought about that. For so long, she had equated love and attention with wealth or status. But Michael and Ben had shown her that kindness didn't come from money. It came from caring, paying attention, and choosing to spend time with someone. That evening, as she walked home, Samantha felt lighter. She wasn't alone, not anymore. And for the first time in years, she believed that someone could make a difference in her life simply by being kind. Meanwhile, Richard Reed began noticing subtle changes in his daughter. She seemed happier, more animated, and less withdrawn. One evening he asked Samantha, "You've been smiling a lot lately. What's changed?" Samantha hesitated. "I met someone," she said slowly. "A man and his son. They made my day. I feel happy, Daddy." Richard's brow furrowed with curiosity. "Who are they?" "They're just nice," Samantha said, shrugging. "They didn't care about my dad's job or our money. They just cared about me." Richard felt a mix of relief and unease. He was grateful that his daughter had found someone to brighten her days, but he also worried about who these people were. He decided to trust her judgment for now, sensing the genuine impact they were having on her life. Days turned into weeks, and Samantha's bond with Michael and Ben deepened. They shared laughter, stories, and even small adventures around the city. Michael continued to treat her with respect, always mindful of her feelings, while Ben's innocent humor brought light into her otherwise structured, lonely life. One snowy afternoon, as they built a small snowman in the park, Samantha realized something extraordinary. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She had people who cared, people who noticed her, and people who made her feel important, not for her father's position, but for who she truly was. And in that moment, Samantha understood something crucial. A single act of kindness, even from a stranger, could change the course of a person's day, their week, or even their life. Michael and Ben had done exactly that, and she would never forget it. The weeks passed quickly, and Samantha's days began to feel brighter. The visits with Michael and Ben had become the highlight of her week, and she found herself eagerly anticipating the next adventure or shared cup of hot chocolate. Yet, despite her growing happiness, challenges remained. At school, Samantha often felt like an outsider. Her classmates envied her father's wealth and power, and though they tried to include her, there was always a subtle distance. She longed for genuine connection, for someone to see her as a person rather than the CEO's daughter. Michael had become that person, but he wasn't there to shield her during every lunch break or classroom interaction. One afternoon, Samantha sat alone on a bench outside the school, snowflakes melting on her coat. She hugged her backpack tightly, feeling the familiar ache of isolation. Her phone buzzed with a message from Michael. "Hey, want to meet me and Ben after school? I have a little surprise for you." A small smile tugged at her lips. For the first time all day, she felt hope. When Samantha arrived at the park, Michael and Ben were waiting. A thermos of hot chocolate in Michael's hand and a small picnic blanket spread out on the snow. "I brought some warmth for a cold day," Michael said with a grin. "And a little treat, too." Ben ran over and handed Samantha a homemade cookie, slightly misshapen but warm and fragrant. "It's magic," he declared, "guaranteed to make anyone smile." Samantha laughed, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in months. For that brief afternoon, there were no worries about school, no tension from her father's absence, no pressures from her family's wealth. Just friendship, laughter, and the quiet understanding that she mattered. However, the simplicity of the moment was interrupted when Samantha's phone rang. It was her father, his tone hurried and concerned. "Samantha, are you with Michael?" "Yes, Daddy," Samantha replied, a little hesitantly. "Good. I want to remind you that you can't stay out too late," he said, his voice softening. "I trust you, but I worry. Please promise me you'll come home soon." "I promise," she said, but she could sense the weight of his concern. Samantha loved her father deeply, but she sometimes wished he could see how much she needed people like Michael and Ben in her life, not just for fun, but for genuine companionship. Later that evening, Samantha confided in Michael. "My dad, he cares about me, but he doesn't always understand what I need. He thinks safety is just about rules and schedules, but sometimes I just need someone to notice me." Michael nodded. "I understand. And you know what? That's what friends do. They notice you, they care, and they make your day a little brighter. That's why I'm here. That's why Ben and I spend time with you." Samantha smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. It wasn't about gifts or wealth. It was about attention, kindness, and understanding. It was about being seen. A few days later, a minor crisis tested their growing bond. Samantha had misplaced an important school project, one that could affect her grades, and panic set in. She frantically searched her room, her backpack, and even the lobby of her father's building, growing more anxious by the minute. Sensing her distress, Michael immediately offered to help. "Don't worry, Samantha, we'll find it together." With Ben's help, they retraced her steps, checking every place she had been. Michael guided her patiently, teaching her how to stay calm and think methodically instead of letting panic take over. Within an hour, the missing project was found, tucked behind a radiator in her classroom. Samantha breathed a sigh of relief, her gratitude overwhelming. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Michael smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think. And sometimes it just helps to have a little guidance." As the holidays approached, Samantha began noticing subtle changes in herself. She was more confident at school, more willing to share her thoughts with her classmates, and more open to forming friendships beyond the safety of Michael and Ben. The small acts of kindness she experienced, the attention, patience, and empathy, were reshaping her view of the world. One snowy evening, as the three of them walked through the park, Samantha looked up at Michael. "Do you know something?" she asked. "What?" Michael replied. "You've made my days better," she said shyly. "Even when my dad is busy, even when I feel alone, I know I can count on you and Ben. You make me feel like I matter." Michael felt a lump in his throat. "You do matter, Samantha, and I hope you always remember that." Little did Samantha know, her simple honesty and warmth had also touched Michael in ways he hadn't expected. Seeing her growth, her courage, and her ability to find joy despite loneliness reminded him why he worked so hard for his son, and why helping someone else, even briefly, could change lives profoundly. By the time Christmas Eve arrived, Samantha had formed a deep bond with Michael and Ben. Their presence had filled a void she hadn't even realized existed. And yet, a larger revelation was about to unfold, one that would affect not only her life but the relationship between her father and the single father who had made her day. For now, Samantha felt safe, happy, and truly seen. She had discovered the power of kindness, the joy of friendship, and the difference one person could make in a lonely child's life. And in the weeks to come, she would discover just how extraordinary that difference could be. Christmas was just days away, and the city streets were alive with lights, music, and the hustle of holiday shoppers. Samantha's excitement was palpable. She had never experienced Christmas quite like this. Not just the decorations or the gifts, but the warmth that came from real friendship and attention. Michael and Ben had become an anchor in her life, their visits bringing joy she hadn't realized she had been missing. One afternoon, Richard Reed noticed Samantha's cheerful demeanor as she returned from school. She was humming, skipping along the sidewalk, and even waving at neighbors she normally ignored. He paused, curiosity piqued. "Samantha, you've been different lately," he remarked. "More cheerful, more alive. What's going on?" Samantha hesitated for a moment. Could she tell him about Michael and Ben without sounding boastful or betraying their trust? "I met some friends," she said finally. "They make me happy, Daddy. Just spend time with me and it's nice." Richard frowned slightly. torn between gratitude and concern. "Friends?" he asked. "Can you tell me who they are? They're just—" "Someone who cares," Samantha replied softly, smiling. "They don't care about our money or anything else. They just care about me." Richard's heart softened. He realized that his daughter had found something he had struggled to provide: genuine company, connection, and attention. For years, his work had consumed him, leaving Samantha lonely despite his efforts. Now, someone else had stepped in, not to replace him, but to fill a gap he had unknowingly left. That evening, Samantha eagerly awaited Michael and Ben's visit. True to their word, they arrived with a small bag of treats and a thermos of hot chocolate. "Hi, Samantha," Ben shouted, his cheeks rosy from the cold. "We brought snacks and a surprise." Michael handed her the thermos. "It's just something warm for a chilly evening," he said, smiling. "And as for the surprise, you'll see soon." Curiosity sparkling in her eyes, Samantha followed them to a nearby park. There, they had arranged a small snowball game, building a miniature snow fort and laughing until their cheeks burned. For Samantha, the simple joy of play, without expectation, judgment, or pressure, was transformative. It was then that Richard, curious about his daughter's new cheerfulness, decided to follow discreetly. From a distance, he watched Samantha laugh freely, play with Ben, and interact with Michael. He felt a pang of both pride and humility. Pride because his daughter had found companionship and joy, and humility because he realized that sometimes someone outside the family could teach lessons even he could not. After the play, the trio settled on a park bench, sipping hot chocolate. Samantha glanced at Michael with a shy smile. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. "You make me feel not so alone." Michael smiled, touched by her sincerity. "That's what friends are for, and sometimes all it takes is a little attention to make someone's day brighter." Richard stepped forward, clearing his throat. Samantha turned, surprised to see her father standing there. "Daddy!" she exclaimed. "You saw us." Richard smiled gently. "I did, and I wanted to see who's been making my daughter so happy." He turned to Michael, extending a hand. "I'm Richard Reed. Thank you for taking care of Samantha." Michael shook his hand, slightly embarrassed. "I didn't do much, sir. Just spent some time with her. She's amazing, that's all." Richard nodded, recognizing the truth. Sometimes the simplest gestures, kindness, attention, and presence, could have a profound impact. And now, he saw firsthand how Michael's actions had changed Samantha's world. Over the next few days, preparations for the company's annual holiday event brought Samantha, Michael, and Ben together again. Samantha was invited to the event as Richard's daughter, and Michael and Ben were included as special guests. For Samantha, it was an extraordinary experience. She saw her father in a different light, busy but capable of warmth and appreciation. And she also recognized how much she had grown from the small, unassuming moments with Michael and Ben. During the event, a small crisis unfolded. Samantha accidentally dropped her father's phone in a fountain while trying to feed a stray cat outside. Panic set in, and Samantha felt her old fear and loneliness resurface. Michael quickly sprang into action, retrieving the phone with care and calming Samantha's anxiety. "You see," Michael said gently, "even small mistakes don't define you. You handle them, and you grow stronger." Richard watched the interaction, realization dawning. He had spent years trying to teach Samantha responsibility and independence, but he now understood that sometimes life's lessons came through empathy, patience, and the guidance of someone who truly sees a child. By the end of the event, Samantha's heart was full. She had experienced joy, friendship, and a sense of belonging that money alone could never provide. Michael had shown her the power of simple acts, of giving attention and care, and Richard had finally seen the impact of outside kin. On his daughter. That night, Samantha lay in bed, reflecting on the past weeks. She thought about how one single father's decision to notice her, spend time with her, and treat her with kindness had transformed her life. She realized that happiness wasn't always about wealth, power, or material gifts. It was about connection, understanding, and being seen for who she truly was. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that this Christmas, filled with warmth, friendship, and unexpected joy, would remain unforgettable. Christmas morning dawned crisp and clear, with sunlight glinting off the snow-covered streets. Samantha woke early, her heart racing with excitement. Unlike past years, she didn't feel alone or anxious. She had people in her life who genuinely cared about her: Michael, Ben, and of course her father, Richard, whose perspective had begun to shift. Downstairs, Samantha found a small note taped to the breakfast table. To Samantha, with love. Make today magical. Dad, her heart swelled. Even though her father's work often kept him busy, he had taken the time to acknowledge her, to make her feel special. She glanced at the door, half expecting Michael and Ben to arrive for their morning tradition. Sure enough, a soft knock came, followed by Michael's warm voice. "Merry Christmas, Samantha!" Samantha ran to the door, throwing her arms around him. Ben clung to her side, grinning from ear to ear. "We've got hot chocolate and cookies. And a little surprise." Michael carried a small, carefully wrapped package. Samantha tore it open to reveal a handmade snow globe, inside which a tiny family stood under a Christmas tree. "It's beautiful," she whispered, eyes shining. "It's to remind you," Michael said gently, "that families come in many forms, and sometimes the people who notice you and care for you become family too." Samantha's smile widened, and she felt an overwhelming warmth in her chest. For the first time in years, she truly believed it. Family wasn't just defined by blood or wealth, it was defined by love, care, and presence. Later that day, Richard entered the living room, observing the scene before him, his daughter laughing with two people who had become integral to her happiness. He realized something profound. He had spent years providing for Samantha financially, yet it was the small, consistent acts of kindness from Michael and the genuine friendship they shared that had transformed her life in ways money never could. Richard approached Michael, extending his hand. "Thank you for everything you've done for Samantha," he said sincerely. "You've made more of a difference than I ever could with money or gifts." Michael shook his hand, smiling humbly. "I didn't do much, sir, just tried to notice her. That's all any of us can do." Richard nodded, a newfound respect in his eyes. He realized that sometimes, even the wealthiest and most powerful needed help seeing what mattered most, the hearts of those they loved. The day continued with laughter, shared stories, and quiet moments of reflection. Samantha watched as her father engaged with Michael and Ben, realizing that their connection was no longer just about fun. It was about trust, guidance, and mutual respect. Her heart swelled with gratitude, understanding that kindness could bridge gaps that money, authority, or status could not. At one point, Samantha pulled Michael aside. "Thank you for noticing me," she whispered. "I don't think I'd be this happy without you and Ben." Michael knelt to her level. "You've always been special, Samantha. I just helped you see it," and she understood. The magic wasn't in the gifts, the decorations, or even the attention. It was in the genuine care, the time spent, and the unwavering praise. Sense of someone who truly saw her. By evening, the family gathered around the Christmas tree. Richard hugged Samantha tightly. "I see it now," he said softly. "The happiness you have, the confidence, the joy. It wasn't something I could give with work or wealth. It came from someone who simply cared. And I am so grateful." Samantha beamed, looking at Michael and Ben. "See, Daddy? Sometimes even strangers can change your life." Richard smiled, realizing the truth in her words. He had thought he was giving her everything she needed, but in reality, it was the kindness and attention of others, combined with his love, that had completed the picture. As snow fell softly outside, Samantha reflected on how one morning, when she was left alone in a cold, empty lobby, had led to everything. A single act of kindness from a stranger, a moment of attention and care, had blossomed into friendship, trust, and love that would shape her life forever. She understood something profound. Happiness, confidence, and hope weren't bought or forced. They were given freely by those who truly saw you. And that Christmas, Samantha felt surrounded by people who not only saw her, but valued her for exactly who she was. As Michael and Ben left later that evening, Samantha hugged them tightly. "Thank you for making my day and my life," she whispered. Michael smiled. "Anytime, Samantha. Remember, kindness always matters, and sometimes it changes everything." Samantha went to bed that night with a heart full of gratitude, warmth, and joy. She knew that her life had been forever transformed, not by wealth, titles, or status, but by simple, genuine acts of care and attention. And for the first time she slept peacefully, knowing that she was truly seen, truly loved, and truly valued.